Now it's time to start testing our controller. So the new describe block, and this time we are going to put the description shopping, list controller, helper methods test. Now I'm calling this helper methods test because these will only test, this specific describe block wraps only tests which are basically executing testing methods which do not interact with the database. So all these methods which were basically checking whether there are any more characters needed, if basically we are okay to go, and so on. So once we've provided the description, now we're going for the function, 2 brackets, set of curly brackets, semicolon after all this, and we're going to start with the variables. First one will be $scope. The next one will be helper factory again, and the last one will be shopping list controller, and then semicolon. Before each statement again, so before any of the tests is executed, run this function, then semicolon after all this, and again let me just scroll up here. And inside of the before each, again we need to call our module first, so module my app, semicolon, and then injecting a few services, and we are going to go for inject, and then we go for function, and this specific function will take 3 arguments. First one will be root scope. Each application in Angular has a single root scope. All other scopes, like the scope which we've been using inside of our controller, are simply descendant scopes of the root scope. That's why we need the root scope here as the argument. And then we go for our helper factory, again with the underscore, because obviously we have already variable helper factory here. So helper factory and underscore again, then controller, because we are going to be using our controller here. So first we're going to create a scope out of this root scope. So scope equals root scope dot new with the $sign as well. So technically we are creating the new scope for our test. Then we are associating helper factory with our instance of the helper factory. And after this, we are going for shopping list controller equals, and then we go for controller, and the name of our controller, shopping list controller, and then comma, and we put in the object with 2 parameters, which is basically the arguments which are passing to our controller. There are more than just 2, but only 2 that we are actually going to be using within this test. So scope, which now is our new scope, so we can just pass our private property here, and then helper factory, which we are also using inside of a factory. Let me just type it first. Inside of our shipping control, obviously, helper factory. Sorry, rather than semicolon, just nothing at the end of this one. So before each statement is now completed, we can scroll down and start our tests. When we're creating the new instance of the controller in Jasmine for testing, all other arguments that we have missed here are also passed to this controller. However, only these 2 are the ones that we are going to be manipulating from within the test. That's why we need to have access to them, obviously. The other arguments, like our constants, for instance, they are not going to change, so they are going to be automatically passed to this test, test controller, the way they are actually inside of our shopping list controller, as arguments, obviously. So the first test will be testing our how many more characters needed method. So we're going to start with it, and then description should return 0 for 2 characters. Then comma, function, set of curly brackets, semicolon after this. So now what we're doing, we're specifying scope and item equals just 2 characters. So let's put them as a string, 1, 2, simply. Then semicolon. So now that we've obviously defined the string for the item on our scope, we can run the expect method. Expect that scope dot how many characters needed, and now the method to equal 0. That's what we want. Obviously this expect should equal 0. Basically we've got 2 characters. Our constant minimal characters constant obviously has 2 characters associated with it. So if there are 2 characters already, there are no more characters needed, and it returns, this specific method will return 0. So let's test it. If we save it and go to our browser, refresh the page, and there we go. This is our new block. And should return 0 for 2 characters. Now, just to prove that obviously this works, let's go and put something different. If we go back to our editor, and let's remove 1 character, and we only now obviously we only have 1 character for the item on the scope. If we now save it, go back to the browser, refresh the page, and there we go. We've got expect 1 to equal 0. We obviously see now clearly that there is a problem. So this is obviously where we would know what is happening. We're going for shipping controller helper test methods should return 0 for 2 characters. And obviously it tells you where is what, basically. So let's go back to our editor, and let's put another item. We obviously, if we put 3, it's still going to equal 0 because there won't be, we don't need any more characters. So if we save it, refresh the page, obviously it's still true because we only check if the minimal characters have been met. So this is our should return 0 for 2 characters test. If we create another one quickly, and now should return 40 for 10 characters. And now function, semicolon. And now what we're gonna go is create the scope again. I'm sorry, use the scope rather than create it. And item. And this time we are going to create 10 characters, and I'm simply going to use numbers again. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. And 0. So we've got 10 characters, it should return 10 for the method how many characters remaining. So expect scope and our method how many characters remaining to equal 40. Let me just indent this, scroll up so you can see this a little bit clearer. Maximum characters with our constant max characters has 50. So if we given item 10 characters, it should return 40 that it's remaining. So if we now save the our test, go back to the browser, refresh the page, and there we go. Second test is also successful. Now if we go back to the editor, and let's remove 1 character, for instance, save it, go back to the browser, refresh it, you can see we've got a error. Obviously this specific test is failing. If we go back and add 1 and another one, so we've got 11 characters, it's all should fail. So if we go back to the browser, refresh, still fails, it tells you the expected 39 to equal 40. Obviously that's incorrect. If we go back, remove this one, we only have 10, go back, refresh, test obviously is successful. So let's move to the next video and continue with our helper methods.